Two imposing guards stood sentinel in front of a grandiose door, guarding the entrance to a room that held the coveted library. Fakir, with a sense of anticipation, made his way towards the chamber, leading the way as he had never done before. Once inside, he paused, reflecting on the significance of this visit. It marked his first time setting foot in this hallowed space in person. As he perused the vast collection of books, he recognized the titles that had long eluded him, a treasure trove of knowledge he had yearned to acquire in his previous life. He understood that these advanced techniques were reserved for those considered legitimate heirs, a safeguard against any potential betrayal or threat to their master. The Baskerville family had devised this system, locking away valuable knowledge behind chains and barriers. Fakir couldn't help but wonder if the book before him was the one he had sought for so long. In his hand, he held a key, a gift from Hugo, an unexpected opportunity to delve into the secrets of the sixth technique, a privilege he had never been granted in his past life. With cautious anticipation, Fakir inserted the key into the lock, a silent question lingering in his mind. Did Hugo doubt his ability to master the technique in a single day? As the pages revealed their secrets, Fakir's thoughts turned to the past. He had memorized the theories behind the first four techniques exhaustively, hoping to decipher the elusive fifth technique, a task that seemed to require halting the flow of mana after drawing the fourth tooth. In the realm of Baskerville swordsmanship, each tooth represented a specific technique, with red sword energy manifesting upon drawing a tooth. Fakir continued to flip through the pages, his indifference towards the sixth technique apparent. He had come here for a different purpose. Exiting the library, Fakir returned to the guards, who were taken aback by his swift return. They inquired if he had forgotten something outside, offering to retrieve it for him. They also mentioned the existence of more books on swordsmanship deep within the library's recesses. Fakir politely declined their assistance, stating that he had accomplished what he had set out to do. The guard, perhaps out of curiosity, asked if he wished to stay longer, hinting at the hidden treasures that lay undiscovered. However, Fakir had other plans, expressing his desire to explore different volumes. He urged them to carry out their duties while he continued his quest for knowledge. As Fakir ascended the spiral staircase to the next floor, the guards exchanged whispers, puzzled by his apparent disinterest in the library's riches. They speculated about the value of the books in the miscellaneous section he was headed to, but Fakir paid them no mind. He knew that they underestimated the true worth of those books. Upon reaching the next floor, Fakir's discerning eyes landed on a particular book, one that stood out amidst the eclectic collection. Fakir's elation was palpable as he finally laid his hands on the coveted book titled The Lurking Ambush. He couldn't contain his excitement as he eagerly opened it, only to be met with disappointment. A ripped page rendered the book seemingly useless, relegating it to the status of a mere miscellaneous item. However, Fakir couldn't help but grin widely, for he alone knew the book's true worth, a memory from his pre-regression days resurfacing. In that distant past, Fakir had been part of a squad that had stumbled upon a peculiar relic within a dungeon located on the border of the Laruji Tylon War Mountains. This relic contained a single torn page from a Baskerville swordsmanship book, bearing the unmistakable handwriting of the Baskerville clan. To Hugo's amazement, who led the squad, he ordered everyone to scour the entire library in search of the book that matched the page, a task that proved to be daunting until they found The Lurking Ambush. The book held the coveted 10th technique, a precious treasure penned by their ancestors. Hugo had become consumed by the desire to unlock its secrets, and had even resorted to sending hounds to the 7 great families, declaring war on them to retrieve the remaining 6 pages of the technique. This relentless pursuit had come at a great cost, with many hounds sacrificed, ultimately leading to Fakir providing all the pages. The reward for his efforts had been the death of Vaku, a memory that still fueled Fakir's anger. As Fakir held the book in his hands, he was determined to ensure that history did not repeat itself. He had given Hugo all the pages in their previous lives, and this time, he wouldn't allow the same fate to befall him. He knew that the reason he couldn't progress beyond the 4th technique was his lack of access to the original book. With a sense of purpose, Fakir began reading the book, realizing that without the other pages, it made little sense. However, he remained resolute, knowing that once he possessed all the pages, the book would transform into a masterpiece of swordsmanship. Reminding himself of his past strengths and the urgency of his mission, Fakir delved deep into the book's contents. Night turned to day as he immersed himself in its teachings, his determination unwavering. Finally, when he closed the book, it seemed as if he had read for an entire day, but this dedication had allowed him to memorize every detail from start to finish. Looking around, Fakir sensed that the Guardian Knights were nowhere in sight. He closed his eyes, envisioning a phantom figure before him. His arm began to glow with a red aura as he opened his eyes and struck out with the first technique. The strikes continued, seamlessly transitioning from one technique to the next. Amidst his focused training, Fakir couldn't help but grit his teeth, reflecting on his past self's inadequacies. He had worked tirelessly to attain the highest level of graduator aura, but had found himself unsuited to mastering proper sword techniques, leading the direct bloodline to become hostile toward him. Determined to rewrite his destiny, Fakir pressed on, knowing that he needed to regain the power he once possessed before his regression. The primary reason for Fakir's past struggles had been his status as an illegitimate child. Fueled by determination, he dashed to the side of the imaginary figure, challenging its belief that he would follow the same path again. As he approached the figure, it transformed into the older version of Hugo, the man who had once been his mentor. Fakir sliced relentlessly through the phantom Hugo, his strikes filled with determination. Exiting the imaginary space, he was left breathless, examining his hand, still questioning his strength and whether he had truly drawn out the elusive fifth tooth. He clenched both fists in victory, proud of the feat he had just accomplished. Overwhelmed with happiness, he was on the verge of tears. His determination led him to scan his surroundings, searching for a sword nearby to test the fifth technique once more. He realized that he had made history, as the young hound's canine teeth that had once bared toward his master had finally succeeded in drawing the fifth tooth. Fakir believed he could reach the level he once held, as long as his mana could support it. A red liquid aura enveloped his hand, signifying his advancement from a high-class sword expert to a low-class graduator. It was a feat that had taken him 30 years to achieve, but he had reached it at the tender age of 8. Graduators were on an entirely different level compared to sword experts, as their aura transitioned from solid to liquid, granting them increased density and flexibility. With his improved swordsmanship and the prospect of reaching the coveted 10th technique, Fakir saw endless possibilities. The farm technique he had learned before had its limitations, but the lurking ambush offered a perfect balance between offense and defense, with no growth restrictions. Fakir carefully placed the book near a window, contemplating the extent to which he should reveal his newfound strength to Hugo. Striking a balance was crucial, neither too much nor too little. He took out an object from his pocket and positioned it in front of the book, harnessing the sunlight to ignite a small fire on its pages. A sly grin played on Fakir's lips as he ensured that he was the sole possessor of the 10th technique this time. Just as the book began to burn, the Guardian Knights appeared behind him, inquiring about the unusual smell. They questioned Fakir, and he casually replied that he had accidentally left a magnifying glass around, leading to the book's destruction. The guards, relieved to hear that only a seemingly useless book had been damaged, agreed to keep the incident a secret. Fakir proposed moving on, pointing out more pressing matters to handle, and the guards readily concurred. Fakir left the scene with a smile, leaving the guards with newfound respect for his character. As he walked away, he appeared before Hugo and Barrymore once more. Hugo inquired if Fakir had reached enlightenment, to which he replied, "Sort of. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. If you could control time, what would you do?" Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now, back to the recap. Hugo was intrigued by Fakir's cryptic description of what he had learned. Something warm, sharp, yet soft and viscous. Both Hugo and Barrymore were alarmed by this enigmatic statement. Barrymore ventured a guess, suggesting it might be related to aura. Aura was typically something that only 15-year-olds could obtain after years of rigorous training. Hugo, while pondering why he was getting excited over an 8-year-old, asked Fakir to demonstrate what he had learned. Fakir agreed happily, and an arena was promptly prepared for the showcase. Many young masters gathered in the stands, confused and curious, as they watched Fakir standing there, armed with a sword. Barrymore inquired about Hugo's intentions for the demonstration. Hugo replied that a monster would be released to test Fakir's skills. The gates opened, revealing a massive orc, bound with chains all over its body. The creature growled menacingly, its red eyes glaring. Other young masters in the stands were taken aback, wondering if an 8-year-old could face an orc on his own. Fakir and the orc stood face to face. Hugo signaled to the Guardian Knights to remove the orc's chains. With a powerful roar, the orc lunged toward Fakir. The young prodigy, displaying a calm demeanor, swiftly swung his sword, cleanly slicing off the orc's arm with a single strike. The audience was stunned by the display of skill. The orc, bewildered by its injury, couldn't comprehend what had just happened. Without wasting a moment, Fakir dashed forward and, with another precise strike, severed the orc's leg, causing it to collapse to the ground. The orc remained perplexed, unable to fathom why it was bleeding for the first time, its regenerative abilities seemingly ineffective against Vikir's onslaught. It was the result of the Bloodhound skill overpowering the orc's natural regenerative capabilities. People in the stands were left in awe, wondering how an 8-year-old could possess such incredible strength. Hugo watched with a deep sense of contemplation. Vikar turned to him, indicating that this was what he had learned in the library. Vikir then revealed Aura Blade, his sword enveloped in a strong red aura. The orc, attempting to rise, sensed a formidable presence and tried to react, but Vikir moved with lightning speed, smashing the orc's head into oblivion with a single dash, the aura enhancing his attack. Hugo sat in shock, seeing the red aura emanating from the young prodigy. Barrymore, on the other hand, congratulated Hugo on witnessing the birth of a genius, suggesting that this level of talent was unlike anything they had seen from other families. However, Hugo couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss with the orc. He noticed that its blood wasn't stopping, even though orcs were renowned for their rapid regeneration. He tried to downplay Vikir's victory, attributing it to the orc's weakened state. Barrymore, puzzled by Hugo's demeanor, inquired if there was anything stronger that could challenge Vikir, his smile hinting at a deeper intrigue that surprised Hugo. Vikir couldn't help but relish the shocked expressions of the crowd as they contemplated his request for a stronger opponent than an orc. He understood that this was the right moment to demonstrate his newfound strength, hoping that it would eventually lead to his emancipation from Hugo's shadow. Hugo agreed with Vikir's request and ordered the release of a captive creature from the barbarian raid, a beast that had been starving since its capture. The crowd's astonishment grew as the massive troll stepped into the arena, growling menacingly at Vikir. With a confident smile, Vikir asked Hugo if he could begin immediately, to which Hugo granted his request. As the troll swung a mighty punch toward him, Vikir effortlessly dodged the attack. However, instead of immediately retaliating, Vikir decided to back away from the troll, confusing the onlookers. Hugo understood the strategy, recognizing the troll's regenerative powers and the need to exhaust it first. Vikir continued to dodge the troll's attacks, waiting for the moment to strike. The troll grew increasingly fatigued, and the crowd marveled at Vikir's tactical brilliance, praising the 8-year-old as a genius. Vikir knew he couldn't unleash his full power yet, as it would make things troublesome for him. Instead, he decided to turn the troll's power against itself. With a precise strike, he sliced the troll's arm, causing it to fall to the ground, clutching its bleeding shoulder. The crowd erupted in applause and admiration for Vikir's strategic prowess. However, Vikir realized that the first technique alone was insufficient to penetrate the troll's tough skin. Hugo, concerned for Vikir's safety, suggested he stop, but Vikir insisted he was almost finished. He felt an epiphany approaching, vowing to give up if he couldn't defeat the troll with the next attack. The troll, infuriated and desperate, released its red aura, preparing for a final assault. It charged at Vikir, yelling in rage, but then it realized something about him. In the next instant, a deadly aura image emanated from Vikir, and with a swift, masterful strike, Vikir cleaved the troll in half, unleashing the Hound's aura. The entire arena fell into stunned silence as they witnessed this astounding feat. Vikir, even himself, shocked by what he had just accomplished, couldn't help but laugh in exhilaration, declaring that he had done it. Hugo, along with everyone in the arena, could hardly believe their eyes. A week later, Vikir found himself in the dining room, discontent with the food. He noticed that everyone had been avoiding him since his remarkable victory in the arena. However, he took solace in the astonishment displayed on Hugo's face, realizing that he had only revealed a fraction of his true power that day. In reality, he had become much more formidable. Vikir had also gained the super speed regeneration skill from the troll, which further enhanced his capabilities. As he pondered the changes within himself, he noticed the triplets appearing behind him. Vikir readied himself for whatever might come next. The triplets, noticing Vikir's astonishment, clarified that they didn't want anything from him, other than to convey that they thought he was cool when he defeated the monsters. This unexpected compliment caused Vikir to spit out his food, skeptical about their intentions. Goosebumps crept up his skin as he couldn't shake the feeling that there might be some kind of scheme behind their words. Just as Vikir was grappling with this peculiar interaction, Butler Barrymore made his appearance, informing Vikir that he needed to go to the Patriarch's room. Meanwhile, back at the Baskerville family mansion, Hugo was engaged in a conversation with the Humor Clan Patriarch, Adolf Morg. They discussed the annual training event between the families and expressed their hope that no accidents would occur. Hugo downplayed a minor injury sustained by the Morgage children, referring to them as dramatic. Adolf mentioned that such behavior was typical of nobles, attributing it to their dignified stature. The Ryan Mage clan, the Morgs, and the Iron-Blooded Sword clan, the Baskervilles, were not always at odds. The Emperor had once remarked that magic and swords were a perfect combination, leading to the tradition of annual joint training exercises as a gesture of goodwill between the two families. However, a dispute arose over a ruby mine situated in a region that both families claimed ownership of. Adolf inquired if the Baskervilles had a prodigious talent in their midst, but Hugo dismissed it as insignificant. This unexpected humility from Hugo surprised Adolf, prompting him to mention that the Morgue family also had a genius. Adolf called in Camus, his sister's granddaughter, to meet Hugo. Camus remained silent instead of greeting Hugo and accused him of being a thief who had stolen the ruby mine. Hugo was infuriated by the accusation, and Adolf was taken aback. Camus explained that Hugo had used the term annoying chin beard during a carriage conversation, further angering Hugo. Adolf attempted to defuse the situation, calling it a misunderstanding, but Camus continued to demand the return of the rubies, explaining that she needed them for her research. Hugo, controlling his anger, acknowledged that she was just a child. Adolf held Camus tightly, fearing Hugo's reaction. He couldn't believe that Hugo would threaten an 8-year-old girl. Just then, Vikir entered the room, and Adolf wondered if he might be the supposed supernova. However, Camus was now missing from the room and reappeared in front of Vikir, demanding to know what he had said. Vikir recognized her as Camus Morgue, the genius known as the Iron-Blooded Empress within the Morgue clan. She had single-handedly eradicated monsters and barbarians in the Lone War Mountain, burning them to death on spears and creating a legendary reputation for herself. Vikir also remembered her captivating beauty. Camus insisted that the ruby mines belonged to her, not Vikir. Vikir, unfazed, replied that she had come a long way to throw a tantrum. Flames erupted from Camus at the mention of tantrum. Vikir expressed his eagerness to hear her explanation, causing a replica of ice to form in the room. Astonishing everyone, Camus explained that the ruby mine was situated in the joint security area between the Morgue and Baskerville territories. The issue was that the entrance was in Morgue territory, but the mine extended beneath the Baskerville land. Adolf was pleased with the explanation, but Hugo was visibly upset. Vikir added that the Baskervilles didn't need to mine the rubies, as they were primarily used for magical ingredients. However, he bluntly called Camus an idiot for thinking that anyone would willingly allow another to access their land for the sake of a few pennies. Hearing these words, Camus couldn't contain her anger. She pointed vehemently at the sculpture, indicating which side belonged to each family. With a sweeping motion of her arm across both areas, she asked, "Whose arm is this then?" Vikir, unfazed by her anger, calmly repeated her question and playfully grabbed her arm, saying, "Mine, of course." His response left Camus blushing, her speech stumbling as she wondered why he had claimed her like that. Vikir couldn't resist teasing her further, adding, "Who said you're mine?" Much to her surprise, Vikir suddenly grabbed a nearby knife and brandished it, sending shockwaves through the onlookers. He smiled mischievously while showing the knife, clarifying, "Only your arm belongs to me." The shocking display left both Hugo and Camus in disbelief. Vikir raised her arm high, seemingly ready to cut it with the knife. Camus couldn't hold back her tears and screamed for her uncle's help. Adolf swiftly appeared behind Vikir, his face contorted in anger, and sternly demanded, "Get away from my niece!" Now, Vikir reluctantly let go of her arm, allowing her to run to her uncle's protective embrace. Adolf turned his ire towards Hugo, demanding an explanation for the bizarre situation. Hugo remained silent, his gaze fixed on Vikir. Hugo sternly admonished Vikir, telling him that he had taken his joke too far. Vikir offered an apology, explaining that it was a common jest within their family and that the knife was merely a fake prop. Adolf was shocked to learn that such pranks were common among the twins, and Vikir bowed in remorse. Hugo then redirected the conversation, mentioning that he had some ideas regarding the ruby mines that Adolf should hear. He suggested that they should compete in friendly duels first. Camus couldn't resist a parting shot at Vikir, warning him to watch out and reminding him that she wouldn't forget his antics. Vikir simply smiled and nodded, seemingly unfazed by her threats. The friendly duels between the Baskervilles and Morgues commenced as planned. It was an event where children aged 8 to 15 gathered to battle it out. However, this year, everyone's attention was on the Morgue clan versus the Baskerville clan, specifically Camus and Vikir. They were set to showcase their genius in a duel, following practical training rules. As the bells rang to announce the start of the duel, Camus assured Vikir that she wouldn't hold back and immediately began casting her spells. The crowd was left stunned as she engaged in quadracasting, a feat quite challenging for a 15-year-old. Adolf couldn't help but smile at Hugo, knowing that something extraordinary was unfolding. Camus unleashed her relentless attacks, but Vikir effortlessly dodged them, offering advice to focus on a single spell. Camus retorted, calling him an idiot who didn't understand magic, leaving the spectators in awe of the intense battle unfolding before them. As Vikir closed in on Camus, he summoned a stone wall, a defensive barrier, just in time. However, Vikir shattered it effortlessly, leaving Camus in shock, wondering if this was the true power of the Baskerville clan. The reference to the River Styx suggested the deep and unyielding strength of his attack. Camus closed her eyes momentarily, bracing herself for what was to come. When she opened them, Vikir was right there, extending his hand, and with a flick of his fingers, he sent her flying. This seemingly harmless flick surprised Adolf, who was taken aback by the unexpected force behind it. Meanwhile, Hugo chuckled at the situation. Camus, puzzled by Vikir's actions, inquired about the flick and wondered if he was taking it easy on Camus. Vikir pointed to his own forehead, indicating that hers might hurt, and suggested that they should end the duel before it escalated further. However, Camus ignored the advice and summoned 2 sand walls, laughing behind her defensive barriers. Vikir decided to play along and smashed through the wall with his bare hands, catching Camus off guard. Vikir now questioned Camus about whose arm had crossed the wall, emphasizing his point by flicking her forehead again. He proclaimed himself the stronger individual with a smile, as Camus fell once more, sporting a significant bump on her forehead. Camus angrily held her head and growled at him, threatening to kill him. As Vikir continued to dodge Camus' fire spells, he contemplated how to calm her down. He glanced behind, considering whether to let others handle the situation, as another duel was happening nearby, involving a pair of mages casting fire magic and a skilled swordsman adept at slicing through spells. Vikir saw potential in their abilities. Camus called out to Vikir, frustrated that he was avoiding her. She implored him not to turn away and to face her. Seizing the opportunity, the idiotic mage behind Vikir began chanting a powerful fire spell. Vikir warned Camus to have a defensive spell ready, and just as a massive fireball materialized behind him, Adolf yelled for her to prepare herself. Camus couldn't believe what was unfolding before her eyes. Adolf shouted for action, and a colossal explosion ensued. As the dust and smoke cleared, the onlookers gathered around the scene. They called out to Camus, fearing for her safety. She recognized her uncle's voice amidst the chaos and contemplated her next move. Camus managed to defend against the attack, but her clothes had been burned by the flames. She knew that once the smoke cleared, she would be the center of ridicule. In her mind, she pleaded for someone to help her, and to her surprise, a jacket landed on her head. Vikir stood before her, casually offering the jacket to cover herself. Camus questioned why he would help her, and Vikir simply replied that he wanted to. Camus couldn't help but wonder about his motives. Notably, she noticed that Vikir had been cut by the idiotic swordsman's attack, revealing his well-toned physique as the blood flowed from his wound. The crowd began to enter the smoke, realizing that Camus and Vikir were together. Adolf felt relieved that Camus was unharmed, while Hugo remained silent. The crowd recognized the contrast between Camus on the floor and Vikir, who appeared extremely fit due to his muscular physique, a testament to his rigorous training. Adolf held Camus tightly in his arms as she remained silent, her gaze fixed on him. Back at the mansion, Hugo approached Vikir, inquiring about his battle against the Lady of the Moor clan. Vikir explained that he had once again grasped the reason behind the event. Hugo pressed further, questioning why Vikir hadn't gone for a clear and decisive blow in the duel. Vikir admitted that he had been uncertain about how to deal with a lady in such a situation. Hugo, ever the stern mentor, told Vikir that he had let his guard down and that the wound on his arm should serve as a lesson. Vikir was taken aback by Hugo's unexpected concern. He recalled Hugo's past, marked by coldness, strictness, and brutality, stemming from the loss of his first wife and eldest daughter. However, Vikir brushed aside these thoughts, deeming them irrelevant. Hugo then shifted the conversation to the matter of the ruby mines. Vikir suggested that they should give them away. When Hugo asked for the reasoning behind this decision, Vikir explained that the primary purpose of the Baskerville clan was to expand its territories. The monsters and barbarians near the ruby mines posed a problem, and they could use the Moor clan to help deal with these issues, minimizing their losses during the expansion. Hugo agreed with Vikir's strategy, and Vikir elaborated that once the Moor clan claimed the ruby mines, they could simply push the monsters and barbarians into that region, allowing them to address all the problems at once. Hugo liked the idea of the rubies being stained with the blood of their enemies, which would deter the Moor clan from entering their territory. He affectionately rubbed Vikir's head, acknowledging that his idea was almost perfectly aligned with his own thoughts. However, Vikir couldn't help but think that the idea had originated from Hugo's past. Nevertheless, he agreed to keep an eye on the Moor clan's movements. Hugo assured him that he had already increased the number of hounds scouting the area for that purpose. As they continued walking, they encountered Adolf and Camus waiting for them. Adolf requested another conversation before they returned. Camus, blushing, remained hidden behind her uncle. Back in the room, Hugo asked Adolf what they wanted to discuss. Adolf mentioned that he had another idea to address the issues surrounding the ruby mines, aside from paying for them. He suggested an engagement, an arrangement between the Morgue and Baskerville clans. Hugo inquired which child he had in mind for such an engagement. Adolf's proposal was clear. The eldest son of the Baskerville clan would be engaged to the eldest daughter of the Morgue clan, Camus. Adolf praised Camus, affirming that she was the best choice for such an arrangement. However, Hugo raised a concern, pointing out the substantial age gap between the eldest son, who was 25, and Camus, who was 17. Adolf dismissed this age gap as a non-issue, but Camus spoke out, declaring that she would not marry anyone weaker than her mother. Adolf attempted to convince Camus, suggesting that her medical condition might lead her to remain single for the rest of her life. However, Camus remained resolute in her stance. Hugo intervened, reminding her that this was not a matter of her choice alone. Camus asserted firmly that she had no intention of playing around and looked in a particular direction. Both Hugo and Adolf followed her gaze, and to their surprise, they found themselves staring at Vikir. Adolf whispered to Camus, urging her not to consider Vikir, emphasizing that he was just a small fish in a big pond and only bore the Van surname. Hugo overheard the comment and was slightly angered by it. He spoke out, emphasizing that an engagement should involve the consent of the individuals in question. Camus and Vikir maintained a silence as they locked eyes. Eventually, Vikir slowly opened his mouth and announced his acceptance of the engagement. Adolf, bewildered and somewhat angry at Vikir, was relieved to hear that the engagement was not rejected. Hugo assured Adolf that despite not bearing the Lu name, Vikir was a talented individual. Adolf stood in front of Vikir, sizing him up and trying to understand his motives. Vikir's memories of Adolf Morgue flooded back. Adolf was a Sixth Circle master and one of the strongest members of the Morgue clan, as well as a great supporter of his niece. Adolf questioned Vikir about his lack of response and the sturdiness of his body, seemingly puzzled by Vikir's demeanor and presence. Vikir responded to Adolf, admitting that he hadn't really been paying attention to what Adolf had said earlier. This response surprised Camus and even earned a light chuckle from Hugo. Adolf then asked Hugo for a chance to have a deeper conversation with Vikir. Hugo, in a somewhat amused tone, wondered if the Empire's mage was about to scold an 8-year-old child. Adolf clarified that it was a request as an uncle, and Camus told Hugo that he didn't have to agree to this. Before we continue, let's take a moment to shout out at Blees768, who commented, "Already read this god-tier manhwa, your recaps are also god-tier though, so I'm gonna watch this anyway, on our unordinary video. Thanks for commenting." However, Adolf gave Camus a stern look and told her to stay put, explaining that this was something that was bound to happen to someone else eventually. He then requested Hugo's permission, and Hugo reluctantly agreed. Back at the training arena, Hugo and Camus stood on the sidelines while Adolf and Vikir prepared to face off in the arena. Adolf informed Vikir that they would be testing his abilities and wanted to see everything he was capable of. Vikir silently contemplated the opportunity to gauge Adolf's power and what he was truly capable of. He glanced at Hugo, knowing that his reasons for accepting the request were likely similar. Adolf cast a spell, creating a pot from a combination of fire, earth, and water magic, leaving Camus in awe of his magical prowess. He explained to Vikir that they would duel with a pot of water on his head, and if a single drop fell, it would be Adolf's victory. Vikir remained silent, realizing that this challenge was an excellent way to understand Adolf's power. He also considered that Hugo had likely accepted the challenge for the same reason. The duel began as Adolf called out to Vikir to start. Vikir rushed towards Adolf, ready to strike with his sword. Camus was surprised by his aggressive approach and shouted out that he couldn't charge straight at his uncle. A bright light appeared on Vikir's face as a shield was cast to block the swing of his sword. Adolf questioned why Camus had given him that warning and explained that shield magic was most effective against swordsmen. Vikir stepped back, annoyed by the turn of events. Adolf created fireballs in the air behind him, preparing to go on the offensive. He sent out flames towards Vikir, forcing him to leap back. Camus called out, accusing Adolf of being unfair for not using that magic against her in their duels. Adolf wondered which side she was on, while Hugo considered the attack something that wasn't impossible to dodge and chose not to intervene. Vikir, using his past knowledge and skills, believed he could make Adolf let his guard down and perhaps even defeat him. He struck the shield magic repeatedly, determined to break through. Adolf calmly informed him that it would be the same no matter how many times he attacked the shield, as Vikir's sword would never pierce through it. As Vikir's sword struck the same spot repeatedly, cracks began to form, and Adolf couldn't help but acknowledge the impressive swordsmanship and machine-like precision in Vikir's movements. However, Vikir's sword was also showing signs of wear, and a final swing caused it to shatter into pieces. Adolf reminded Vikir that he should have considered the durability of his sword and shield. He emphasized that it's good to focus on a single goal, but it depends on the opponent. While Adolf was in the middle of his sentence, he noticed something unexpected. A piece of Vikir's shattered sword had pierced the pot on his head, causing water to flow down everywhere. Adolf was stunned to see this turn of events, and Vikir flexed in his own unique style. Camus fell even harder for Vikir, wondering if his victory against his uncle meant their marriage. Hugo, too, was pleased to see Vikir's growth, and questioned if he had raised a stronger hound than he had initially thought. Fast forward 7 years at the Baskerville training grounds, a massive furry beast with horns was growling wildly. Its loud roars shook the air around it, but the hound stood still, unafraid. The beast rushed towards them, causing the hounds to leap into the air and strike it. They surrounded the beast, and it retaliated by striking at all of them. Staffordshire Baskerville, the Shadow Hound, looked on, shouting commands and offering tips on how to defeat the beast. Suddenly, 3 hounds dashed forward, moving past everyone. These were the triplets, and they struck the beast with ease, their skills and dark crimson aura befitting the Baskerville family. The monster stood dazed from their attacks as the hounds seized the opportunity to prepare for the final kill. Blood splattered all over the ground, and the instructor praised them for their performance, declaring them low-rank sword experts. The instructor emphasized that this marked the end of their 7-year training. He warned that, while they had faced a caged monster that day, the ones they would encounter in real life would be far more tenacious. He reminded them that death could occur more easily than they thought, offering 2 options: either use their bloodline to overcome challenges, or build experience to survive. He saluted them, congratulated them on their graduation, and wished them luck in the future. What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps.